Morning, we're learning at the Schutz for Shlema Filan Chayav Aserach. We're on Ayin Dalet Amid Beis, 3 lines to the top. Amir Shlachas. Chavis Shel Trup Shel Shins Avra B'Mei Chavis. This is really a continuation of the previous Gemara, and this is really the same din like we just said. You have a Chavis of Truma, of Yayin of Truma, which is one of the. We had that machlekes between the Rabbanan and Rav Meir. Rav Meir said either Es Shedarka Limnis or Kol Shedarka Limnis. The Rabbanan said there are 6 things that are chashuv, and therefore they can never become batal. Rabbi Akiva said a 7th, which is Kikar Shel Balabayis. But the 6 things, one of them was a chavius sheyesh ba chavius that's sealed, a chavius of yayin that's sealed is considered chashuv, and it can't become batal. So this is talking about that case, a chavius shel truma, a sealed barrel of truma. Shenis avra b'mei chavius, so it's mixed into 100 chavius, so all of them become asur because you have one that's not batal. But then, b'nafal achas mehen liyam melech, one of them fell into the ocean. So this is the same like we saw by Rav Nachman, Lagabi the Tabayis, that if one of them got destroyed, we couldn't then go back and say maybe the one that got destroyed is the one of Ovid Kechavim, and therefore we'll say you can be Mavatal, even though normally Ovid Kechavim is not Batal. So we say over here also, Nafal Achsan Liyamamelech Chutru Kulan. That means in Hach the Nafal, the Sur Nafal. The one that fell is us. The Itztrich. The Itztrich, the Rav Nachman, Itztrich, the Reish Lakish. We need the original din of Rav Nachman by Avodah Zarah, and we need this din of Reish Lakish that we said, Lagabi a Chavis of Truma. Dima the Rav Nachman Havamina, Hanimi Lavedz Kechavim. The Ein Lo Matirit. Avodah Kechavim can never become mutter. So maybe the Chacham were more makel about the allowing it to be bottle, because if you don't allow it to be bottle, it's got to be destroyed. There's no eitzah. But avot truma diyesh matir, in truma you give it to a kayin. A kayin can eat truma. So all that's happening is okay. So you got to sell it all to a kayin for less than its value. Truma is worth less, but it's not a total loss. Loy. On that, maybe we don't say it's bottle because of this heter that one fell into the Yamamel. Read the Reish Lakish, we would have just said the case of Reish Lakish that we say it becomes hutter because one part of it was destroyed. Having a chavis, the minkor and if you lost it, that's only by a chavis, which is a substantial thing. When it falls into Yamamelech, everyone knows it's clear that something fell into Yamamelech, something's different, and we understand it. People won't get confused. They'll understand that's the reason why it's mutter in this case, even though normally a chavis is not batal because it's chashuv, but in this case we say since it's possible it's not there anymore, we allow. Avol tabas the minkor, tabas that's not so evident. If you lost the minkor, if you lost it's not so evident that it fell loy. Shrichas, that's why we need both of the cases. Amar Rabba loy hit the Reish Lakish el chavis the minkor nifilasa. Rabba says. He says that this din of Reish Lakish is taka only true in the case of a chavis because it's valid. Aval te'ena, but if it would be just a fig, a single fig, loy. In that case, even if it fell, even if you had one te'ena of truma. Now I don't know exactly why it wasn't batal. We're gonna have to go according to one of the shitas or one of the cases that it's not batal. But this te'ena was not batal, and then one te'ena fell into the Yam HaMelech. That's not going to be enough to be matered, because the ta'ina, people won't realize that something is missing, and they'll say, "Oh, this ta'ina could be bought." Rabbi Yosef says, "No, just like the ta'ina, since it's chashav enough that it's not becoming bottle, so too when it falls into the Yam HaMelech, it's also going to be recognized." Right, the whole reason why anything is not bottle in the first place of 100 because it has a certain chashivas. So if it has that chashivas will also indicate that if it falls, it's going to be noticed. Amar Abu Lazar, chavis shel truma shenaflu b'kuf chavius. You have a chavis shel truma, like we said, a sealed barrel of truma, of yayin of truma, is not bottle; it's too chashiv. Shenafel b'kuv chavius. it fell into 100 other chavias of kosher, of non-truma yain. You can open up one of them. All of a sudden, now you have. It's similar to the. Once it's open, so now it has a din. It can become bottle. We still don't know, even though you open it. It doesn't mean now we know that this one, which one is the one that was the truma. But this is an open barrel. It's no longer chashiv, so it has the ability to become bottle. So we say it becomes bottle to the rest of the non-truma barrels. There's one a particular din, then you have to also take out, since 1/100th of this whole thing is truma. So it's an issue of mominus, that you're taking away from the kohen his truma. So you only have to, you take away 1/100th of that barrel in order to dine between dine and mominus. You're not stealing from the kohen. You take away 1/100th of it and you set it aside for the kohen.
And but not the rest of the barrels. The rest of the barrels you can have
drink,
all of it. All of it.
It's bottle. Yeah. But that echad from the 1 out of 100, k'dei dimua, is not a din of bittul, it's a separate din.
Okay.
The other din of combo,
Is it 1 out of 50?
No, that's the next Gemara.
Oh.
You lost it doesn't matter that it makes much of a difference. The other din of combo, la hashmaitza. Amalei Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman said to him, Gama v'shasi kachazina hacha. Sounds like someone was drinking, and they were drinking what they're talking about. We're talking about yayin. They were indulging, imbibing of the yayin when they said this svara. Ala ema doesn't make sense what he said. Ala ema niftacha achas mehen noidel amena kadei dimua v'shaisa. Doesn't say where you were allowed to be paseach lechatchila. As we know, ein mevatlin issa lechatchila. So it must be that it got opened, but on its own, and then you could say that it becomes bottle. Amra v'ishia, chavish shel truma shenis avra b'mei b'chamishim chavis. If you have a chavish shel truma, he had that got into 150 barrels of wine. This gives there's a reason why. V'niftechu meya mehen, and 100 of them got opened. I think we're talking about here. We're not we did it on purpose. They got open, so now they're able. Each one of those is able to be bottled, right? There's only one chavas of truma, so the rive is certainly that it's not one of them. It's not each one. You take 150 of each one, and you could drink them. The shar asurin. What about the other 50? The shar asunachi yiftuchu. The other ones don't become mutter automatically. Why would you think otherwise? Why is it different than the first case, right? Where we said if you do 100 and one was open, there's no thought that you would say the rest of them become mutter. I might say there was 100 that got open out of 150. So chances are the issa was amongst those 100, but those 100 are all bottle. We say since each one is pasuach, they're not kosher, they become bottle. Maybe at this point we can look back on the other 50 and say they become bottle because al pi roiv, the one that was the truma was in the other 100. Now it's a little mind twisting, right? Because we're saying that they become bottle because we say it's bottle b'roiv, so we don't have to assume it's in those. But now we're trying to say it should be matir the other 50 because we assume it was in those, even though they're mutter to drink. It seems like it's a little strange that you should say because it's mutter to drink those and they're arrived, we assume that the isser was amongst those 100, but they became mutter to drink. But in any case, that's what the Gemara, that would have been the Havamina. The Gemara says, no, there's no such thing. We don't say it becomes butter with that right. Okay. Now we move on back to our Mishnah. We said in our Mishnah, the first dinim of the Mishnah were about something that's aser bahana, that it becomes aser, that you have to kill it. There's no other choice, right? If it's chatois hamesis and charniska. Then we gave a whole long list of things that are not aser bahana, but they're also to be brought as a carbon. So we brought a case of Reveya and Nirva, and one of the cases was a treifa. A treifa can't be brought as a carbon. A treifa is an animal that has a flaw that's going to cause it to die. So we say a treifa cannot be brought, and therefore it's going to have the din that's yirachi stuff. Fact the Gemara. Bishlama kula lo yadi. All of these different things, a reveya and nirva, it's not evident on the animal that it's a reveya and nirva. So you go, once it got mixed in, there's no way to determine which one was the reveya and the nirva. Elahai treifa hechidami. What's the case of the treifa? We're saying that you can't bring the carbon because all the carbonas, because one of them is mixed in. Iyadi, if we know that it's a treifa, so then remove it from the bunch. If you know that it's a treifa, go check which one is the treifa and take it out. How do you know it's mixed in? If you weren't aware that's a treifa. The kasha is basically it's generally evident if something is treifa. This animal has a piercing in it. And there's two types. It could come from two things. It could have come from a thorn, or it could come from a claw, the clawing from a wolf. Now, the clawing from a wolf is less sanitary than a wolf's claw is less sanitary than a thorn. So a wolf's claw is considered to be a treifa, that it's going to die. But the wound looks the same. So you just see that there's a few animals that have wounds on it. And some of them are from thorns, and one of them is from a wolf. So you have to assume the one that's from a wolf is a treifa, and the others are not, but you don't know which is which. Now, it's an interesting case, right? Because all of a sudden this echad me ribuya is 1 out of 10,000. So all other 10,000, by the case of treifa, all were pierced with thorns. That's Rav Yana's teretz. We're talking about there was one animal that had fallen off a roof and it got concussed. And I know Dr. Kirscherbaum doesn't like to be a doctor when we're learning, but everyone knows that a concussion, when someone gets banged, you never know what's going on underneath the hood. So it's not, you don't see anything evident. But the nefula is considered to be a treifa. Frankly, Mara, nefula nami livdika. There is also a way to check an animal that fell. That means you wait for 24 hours, and then and if it could walk after 24 hours, it's considered that nothing happened. It got lucky. So the Gemara, kasavar. The Gemara says it's not enough that even if it gets up and it walks, after you wait 24 hours and it walks, you still have to check the animal. You have to look to see after you shecht it if it's a treifa, if there's any simani treifa from the fall. It requires a checking, and if you don't check it, it's going to be nemdon to be a treifa. So he says, and it's not bakavidik to shecht an animal where it still needs to be checked after it's shechted if it's a treifa. You can only check, even though we always check an animal for treifa, that's misafik. We want to make sure that doesn't happen to be a treifa. But if it's a chazaka that there could be a treifa and it requires the checking to see if it's a treifa, then you can't shecht it for a carbon under those circumstances.
So check everyone a day later.
The problem is even if we're saying you check it, when you say check it, what do you mean check it a day later? By doing what?
If it could walk.
We're saying that even if it could walk, you still need to check the insides of the animal to see if it's a treifa. It's not enough. We're going according to the mandama that even after walking, after waiting, and after walking, you still need an internal check, which is not allowed to be done on a carbon.
Okay.
So that's the second teretz. The Yirmiyama could go in the Arav, which is it's a machlekes whether you need that extra check or not, but we're going because of the mandama that you do. Yirmiyama could go in the Arav the blood treifa. He says we're talking about where it got mixed with a mother cow was a treifa, and it had a vlad. So there's a manda amar, which is Rashi brings in Tamura that says that it's aser. It's aser brought as a carbon, and the explanation is in Tamura. When we learn Tamura, we'll see what the explanation is. It's not because it itself is considered treifa. I think it's exeris akasav or takanas chacham. So that obviously there's no way to tell. That he's going to go to the mandam, that vlad treifa can't be shechted. Everyone doesn't say like Rabbi Yanai, who said that it's talking about where it's a wolf's claw mixed in with thorn piercings. He holds that you can't tell the difference. They look different, so it doesn't. So therefore, they don't want to say that that's the answer. That it's mixed up. High mashach v'high eagle. The clawing from a wolf is long. He claws and he makes a cup, but a piercing from a thorn is round. It's a puncture. Kreish Lakish le'amri. They didn't say like Kreish Lakish. That said it took about nefula, and that it still requires a bedika even after waiting 24 hours and seeing that it could walk. Kasari amda in a tzricha me'es leis. He holds once it stood up, you don't need to wait, and it's kosher right away. What does that mean? Amda alayim in a tzricha me'es leis al bedikasa boy. So he holds right. So Rashi fills it in. If it stands, it doesn't need an ace. And if it goes, it doesn't even need the bedika. So he moves everything down one step. So he holds there is a way to avoid the internal check as if it walks. And we don't say like Rabbi Yirmiyah because he had said we're going like Rabbi Eliezer that says a vlad treifa can't be brought as a carbon. We don't hold like Rabbi Eliezer. They don't hold like Rabbi Eliezer. So the Mishnah continued. And now we're going back a little bit to Kachim. So our Mishnah, it's not really. The truth is it's not. The Mishnah had said, if you mix up Kachim b'Kachim, Mim b'Mina, if it's the same type of carbon like a Chatas and a Chatas or a Oila and a Oila, then it's not a problem. You just bring the different you just bring the karbanis and you do the proper avodah for that carbon. If it's a chatas, you do the avodas chatas, and the kayin who does it says whoever is the bailam, they should get the kapara. He doesn't have to have in mind specifically who the bailam is. Even though I think we've come across the concept of shaloi l'shem bailam, but that means that he has. For me, you see that stam is good enough. You don't need to have in mind bedafka who the bailam is. You just can't have the wrong bailam in mind. Frak the Gemara, and I don't remember who asked this question. It might have been Menachem. That v'haboy smicha. Was that you, Luzi, or you, Rafal?
No, that wasn't. It was either Menachem or
We
Rafal.
have to wait for Menachem. When Menachem comes back, we'll remind him that was his question when we learned the Mishnah. L'chayra, how can you just bring the karbanos without? Oh, Menachem, we're asking you a question. Yeah, v'haboy smicha. That you need smicha. So how could you just bring it without knowing who the bailam are? The bailam are the ones who have to do the smicha. You're missing the smicha. Now, I'll just note that it's true that it's b'derech klal missing. If you don't do the smicha, it's not ma'akev. But Taisus explains that you can't bring the carbon unless you do the smicha first. That means if you did it without the smicha, it wouldn't ruin it, but you are not allowed to bring the carbon unless you did the smicha. So, how could you go ahead and have the kain bring the carbon? Rav Yosef carbon nashim. Rav Yosef says we're talking about a woman's carbon. There's no din of smicha by nashim, so there's never going to be a requirement that they do the smicha. So these are a bunch of animals of different nashim that got mixed together. Ava b'carbon anashim loy. So tomorrow, ava b'carbon anashim loy. Is it true that you wouldn't be able to say this din by a carbon anashim? You could bring it without knowing who the owners are. Eis ve'abaya. Abayas, carbon yachid shenesaber b'carbon yachid, carbon sibur shenesaber b'carbon sibur. If you have a carbon yachid, either a chatas or oila, so you have a oilus yachid with a oilus with a different yachid's oila, or a carbon tzibur oila, or a chatas, or carbon yachid with carbon tzibur shenis arbu zeh b'zeh. Or if you have a oilus tzibur that was mixed with a oilus yachid, or a chatas tzibur that was mixed with a chatas yachid, or vice versa. So what do? Again, it's the same thing as our Mishnah. It's the same case as our Mishnah. We have min b'minai that were mixed up. The main point of whether it's the same min is just that you should have the same avodah. You can't do the wrong avodah for a different carbon, right? The chatas are lamaila, and the oila, the zrikas dam is lamata, so you're not going to be able to bring them together. So nois and dal and matanis mikol echad ve'echad. You give 4 matanis from each animal. You shach the karbanis. You take the 4. That's what we think at this point. And you do dalad zrikas, meaning if it's a chatas, it means literally dalad zrikas on the 4 karens. And if it's a oila, then you do shnaim shem arba, which is also calling for this purpose arba matanis. Shnaim shem arba on the 2 sides. V'im nosen matana mikol echad yotza. And if you just do 1 matana from each one, that's also yotza, like we learned a couple like a month or 2 ago, that b'diavad you could be yotza with even just 1 matana is sufficient. V'im nosen arba mikulan. And if he did 4, they probably changed that to 1. Where's the shita? The nasan dalma some kul yatza. Yeah, because he says he's going according to Beis Shammai, who says you need 2 for each one, so you need shnaim sheim arba. So if he put together the dam of all these karbanis into a kli, and you did the matanis, the 4 matanis from all of them, you also yotza. B'medvam amurim shis arvu chayim. This is all talking about where they got mixed together while they're alive. Alvanis to arvu shchutin. But if they got mixed together, nice and arba matanis mikulan, then you have to give arba matanis mikulan. Ve'im nasa matan achas mikulan yotza. And if you gave even 1 from all of them, then the yotza. Rabbi says it's not so fast. You can't say if you have a bowl with 100 karbanis, with a dam of 100 karbanis, that you just can be zayrik the dam and not worry about it. You have to check that there's enough for 100 zrikas in that cup, because it has to be enough that it's not being yaitza with 1 zrika. We're saying it's as if, since it's mixed together, you have a zrika for each of them at the same time. So katani, the problem is katani. So back to our issue, right? We said that according to Rabbi Yosef, the way you can bring from a bunch of different people together without smicha is only by noshim, where noshim don't have smicha. So that's the way we avoided. We cleverly got out of the problem. Katani yachadum yud, but we mentioned over here a tzibur, ma tzibur gavri, but a tzibur is talking about men. Tzibur is everyone, including the men. Af yachid gavri, l'chayra means the yachidim are also men, just like the tzibur. I mean, I would, yeah, because I think a carbon tzibur doesn't need smicha. You don't have an owner to do. You don't have a bailam to do smicha by the owners. Amar Rava says, "V'tizbra hamatarzahi." This Mishnah didn't make sense in the first place. Diktani b'medva mamishus avuchayim. He said it's only when they got mixed while the animals were alive. Avon avushchutin lo. Mali chayim, mali shchutin. What difference does it make whether they got mixed when they were alive or they mixed when they were dead. Even if they were mixed when they were alive, if you have still separate cups, it could be you got mixed up. The issue was we were trying to say that when they were mixed after they were geschachten, that sounds like the Gemara was assuming that means that the dam got mixed together from the two cups into one cup. But even after shchutin, it could also be that they were in separate cups. So why are you making it a nafkamina between chayim and shchutin? The real question is whether it's in separate cups or in one cup. So what are you talking about chayim and shchutin? When do we say that you have to do them separately? Is when they when you have them still in separate cups. When it's shchutin ke'ein chayim, when the chayim they're all separate animals, and even after they were geschachten, you have separate cups. Bekaisis. When it's ke'ein chayim bekaisis, they're in separate cups. But if they're all mixed together, then you do all four kaisis, you do all four matanas from this one cup. There's no choice. If you do one, it's yaitah. So according to this, the whole din of the Mishnah is not talking at all about live animals. We're talking about after that they all got mixed up after the shechita. If you're talking about after the shechita, again, there's no issue of smicha. The smicha happened prior to them getting mixed up, so the owners had already done the smicha. The Gemara continues analyzing this brisa that we mentioned. Rebbe had said that we're gonna have enough kamina. It depends on whether or not there was enough in the dam to justify or to be enough for a zrika for each one. But if it's not, if the cup doesn't hold enough, that if you had 100 behemoths and you only have 1 ounce of dam, that's clearly not enough to do all the zrikas. Does Rebbe hold really that there's a minimum when you're talking about a liquid? Why not? This is talking about the hazoyas of a person who becomes tamei mace, that we say he needs the hazoyas of the mechatas of the para aduma that you burn and you make mechatas out of it, and then the person goes and gets spritzed on it on the 3rd day and the 7th day to become tar from tumas mace. If it got mixed up, we're talking over there about a case where it got mixed up with non-para aduma water. So we said, Rebbe said, according to Rebbe Eliezer, if you got spritzed with water that was mixed together with paraduma with other water, hazah kosher materis. Has any amount of water make someone tar from his tumah? Hazah nitzri chashir. And hazah doesn't need a shear. Hazah mechza kasher mechza pasel. And hazah mechza kasher mechza pasel. And you could also do hazah even if it's half kosher water and half non-kosher water. Any amount of water is enough to kasher. So the Gemara is saying, why wouldn't it be the same thing by dam? Why don't we say any amount of dam qualifies for the zrika? Because we're understanding that the concept is that liquid, just like we say liquid, when you mix up liquid, we don't say it's looked at it's discrete pieces of liquid, but we say everything contains a proportionate amount of everything that's in it, right? Like we said, if you remember, we had that then you take a cup from the floor of the Azara to throw for the carbon Pesach. We say that all the dam mixes in. Liquids have a different din than everything else. And similarly, just like we say that it gets every cup has a little bit of drop from everything else, we say every drop is considered to be a full amount. There's no minimum amount of hazah. So the Gemara, what so the first teretz is, so how could Rebbe say over here that there has to be enough for the hazah? So what the Dvav de Rabbi Eliezer, Rebbe had said this b'shem Rabbi Eliezer, but he himself doesn't agree with it.
It's a good point you bring up about the Carbon Pesach. Why don't we bring a kasha from there?
No, because I was just bringing that as an analogy. Over there, we're talking about. You're saying that should be it was too good of an analogy. You're saying like how would it work unless you say a single drop is enough to be a hazah?
Right.
I guess maybe you could say then maybe it has to be a big enough barrel that it has a shear for everyone.
Well, I kind of think when we said the blood was up to the knees, I think that's
Seems impractical. Listen,
Yeah.
the whole bar over there was very impractical.
that's what I'm saying. It's a good question. You're saying. I mean, it would be a right against Rebbe.
I have to tell you, I did not think of this before, and I just thought of it as we were speaking. So I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
Yeah, maybe I'll try to look it up if I remember. So that's one teretz says that it's going according to this is Rebbe Eliezer. Rebbe was just quoting Rebbe Eliezer, but he doesn't agree with him. It could be the nesina of dam on the mizbeach requires a shear. It's not a general rule by liquids. It depends on the context. The gabi nesina on the mizbeach, there is a minimum. Let's see if we can. I didn't look through this Gemara well, but I still have. I'm entitled to another couple of minutes, so I'll take them. Amar Rabbi Chama, B'chor leBeis Shammai, ein machin lenenidas. A b'chor, according to Beis Shammai, according to Beis Shammai, you cannot even a b'chor that became a Baal Mum. So the din is that the b'chor goes to a kayin. It's supposed to be brought as a carbon. If it becomes a Baal Mum, then it doesn't need to be brought as a carbon anymore. There's no pigeon. He just shechs it and eat it. But it has a heightened kedusha. So according to Beis Shammai, even though it can be eaten by someone who's tamei, it doesn't have the kedusha of a carbon, but a nida is excluded that she's not allowed to eat such a b'char. Tmurasei mahu. What's going to be the din if you do a tmura of that b'char? Which is not, again, this is not an actual kachim, right? It's not something that's bring brought as a carbon. It's a b'char that became a Baal Mum, which is just eaten. It's shechted and eaten as it is, but it has some kedusha. Do we say that its tmura is also going to have the same iser, that it's going to be usher to be eaten by the nida? B'char eine nifta. Again, we said the din of the b'char, once it's becomes a Baal Mum, it can't become padri. Even beforehand, it certainly can't. But what tmura? What happens if a person said, I want to exchange this b'char for something else? Does that tmura get the same din that it gets a kedusha, sort of a kedusha of a b'char? Does it also have that it can't be nifta? So I guess what will happen is that you'll have to shecht it and eat it just by belong to the kayf. B'char ein nishkal b'litra. There's a part of the kedushas of a b'char, even if it's a Baal Mum, that it gets shechted and eaten, is that nevertheless it can't be weighed with a weight in the marketplace. It can't be treated as a regular piece of meat. You're not allowed to do that. Tmurasei ma'u. Is that going to apply to its tmur? Amar Rava. So Rava says, Tanya b'charu ma'isa. B'char and ma'isa, which is a ma'isa behema. Mishahumamu, when they get a mum, oisin tmura. Utmurasan kayaysa behen. They have a din tmura, even though they just get eaten as is, and the tmura is going to have the same din as the original. So all three of these things are going to apply. Bar Rav Yirmiyah. Hitvis b'char lebedek habayis. If someone was makdish his b'char to be used for bedek habayis to the Beis Hamikdash. So this is a b'char that was a Baal Mum. So again, it's in this like twilight of, in some ways, being considered kachim, in some ways not. Mal sheyishka b'litra. Can you weigh it in the way that we said? You're not allowed to weigh. It's not bakavadik for b'char, for the meat of a b'char to be weighed in this commercial way. Are you allowed to do it when it's now being brought for Bedek Habayis? Now it's going to be sold and the money is going to go to Bedek Habayis. Do we say Rav the Hektish Adar? Do we want to maximize the amount of money that can be made for them? So when you sell it in the market, you'll get a higher amount than if you just tell someone you can have this piece of meat. There's no weighing it. Or do you say no? You can't be mavaza the meat; it has too much kachim. In our Mishnah, we said that if bekat mixed with the bechar and maisa, you wait for it to get a mum, but yochlu kebechar and maisa, and you eat it as a bechar and maisa. Lav the memra the inanishkal belitra. We're saying yochlu kebechar and maisa. You eat it as a bechar and maisa. What does that mean? What does it mean? In what way is it different than any other meat? It must mean that you can't sell it. You can't bring it to be brought to be weighed. Now, when you're going to be Yirachi Yistavu, why can't you sell it? Vaistais, look, because at this point, right, you want to be paid it. You have to be paid it in order to eat it. Well, why if you paid it for the Bedek Habayis, you'll get more for hektish. So Gemara, Avuna Rakiskia Talmid Rav Yirmi Amri. Mi dami, hasam shtei kedusha shnei gufin. The Mishnah is talking about in the case of because in the case of our Mishnah, we're talking about you had the animal that was hektish together with the bechar. So we say they all have to be eaten as bechar and maisa rather than being paida the animal that was hektish. So over there it's two separate animals. So in that case, we say you can't because of the possibility that this might be the bechar, we don't let you weigh this animal in order to sell it for the full value. But our case over here, where you have the animal together with its tmura, it's is only. I'm sorry. No, right. We're talking about the actual animal that you were makdish. Not talking about the case of a vlad. I'm sorry. The hektish that you wanted to weigh, you were makdish it. I'm sorry, the bechar that you were makdish. Now you want to weigh it in order to bring more kedusha. That's the same animal. So while it's true that you're not treating this bechar with the proper respect, but the gain is going to accrue to that animal itself. So maybe in that case we would allow it. Maskef lo Rav Yosef bar Ovid. Ma'ilu amar haftu li bechar shetfisu lebedek habayis. What happens if someone says, "Be paida for me a bechar that was already given lebedek habayis"? Klum shaymin loy. Would we do such a thing? That means midaraisa, you're not allowed to. Some say, what is the difference of that? How is this any different than our case? Dr. Rashi. He wants to make a t'nai, I guess, in his pidyon that it should be losing all of its kedusha. Certainly, you can't do that. You can't do such a thing. So why do we allow it to? He's saying that there's all the other rules that we can't take off. So why would we allow this rule of not weighing it to go away? So Gemara, have to. Certainly you can't be paid it. But this din, those are all dairysis that you can't be paid it and then make it that you could in order to allow it to be gazuz and to work with it. That the Torah says you can't do. But what we're saying over here is you want to sell it. It's allowed to be eaten. And you want to sell it to allow someone else to eat it and to get the most money for selling it. That's only midrabanan, this din of not weighing it. So maybe that would be allowed. Alam Ravami, klum hiknazeh alamasha kanulazeh. Whereas in the end, we say that just like the Kayan himself who sold it to Lebedeka, he was makdish at Lebedeka bias, when he was only makdish whatever he had. So just like he couldn't do it, they also can't do anymore. Okay, we'll leave the last part for tomorrow.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone.
Have a great day.
Have a good day, everyone. Come tough.